Ballarat, Ballarat, is a city located on the Yarrowee River and lower western plains of the Great Dividing Range in the state of Victoria, Australia, approximately 105 kilometres west-northwest of the state capital, Melbourne. It is the third most populous urban area in the state, with a population of 96,940. It is the state's most populated inland settlement, and third most populated inland settlement in Australia. People from Ballarat are referred to as Ballaratians. The City of Ballarat local government area encompasses both the Greater Ballarat urban area and outlying towns with an area of 740 square kilometres, and has an urban area population of 93,501. Ballarat is its most populous urban centre, seat of local government and administrative centre. It was named by Scottish squatter Archibald Yule, who established the first settlement, his sheep run called Ballarat, in 1837, with the name derived from local Waithorong Aboriginal words for the area, Ballarat, thought to mean resting place. The present spelling was officially adopted by the city of Ballarat in 1996. It is one of the most significant Victorian-era boom towns in Australia, just months after Victoria was granted separation from New South Wales. The Victorian gold rush transformed Ballarat from a small sheep station to a major settlement. Gold was discovered at Poverty Point on 18 August 1851, and news quickly spread of rich alluvial fields where gold could easily be extracted. Within months, approximately 20,000 migrants had rushed the district. Several Australian mining innovations were made at the Ballarat diggings, including the first use of a Chilean mill in 1851 and the first use of a mine cage in 1861. Unlike many other gold rush boom towns, the Ballarat fields experienced sustained high gold yields for decades. The Eureka Rebellion began in Ballarat, and the only armed rebellion in Australian history, the Battle of Eureka Stockade, took place on 3 December 1854. In response to the event, the first male suffrage in Australia was instituted, and as such Eureka is interpreted by some as the origin of democracy in Australia. The gold rush and boom gave birth to many other significant cultural legacies. The rebellion's symbol, the Eureka flag, has become a national symbol and is held at the Museum of Australian Democracy at Eureka in Ballarat. Other nationally significant heritage structures include the Ballarat Botanical Gardens, established 1857. The best example of a regional botanic gardens in Australia with the greatest concentration of public statuary, including the official Prime Minister's Avenue, the longest-running lyric theatre building, Her Majesty's, established 1875, the first municipal observatory, established 1886, and the earliest and longest memorial avenue, the Avenue of Honour, established between 1917 and 1919. Proclaimed a city in 1871, its prosperity continued until late in the 19th century, after which its importance relative to both Melbourne and Geelong rapidly faded with the slowing of gold extraction. It has endured as a major regional centre, hosting the rowing and kayaking events from the 1956 Summer Olympics. It is the commercial capital of the Central Highlands and the largest city in the Goldfields region of Victoria, a significant tourist destination. Ballarat is known for its history, culture and its well-preserved Victorian-era heritage. History. Prehistory and European settlement. Prior to the European settlement of Australia, the Ballarat region was populated by the Waithorong people, an indigenous Australian people. The Boro-Gunditj tribe's territory was based along the Yarrowee River. The first Europeans to sight the area were an 1837 party of 6 mostly Scottish squatters from Geelong led by Somerville Lermonth, who were in search of land less affected by the severe drought for their sheep to graze. The party scaled Mount Bunanyong. Among them were Somerville's brother Thomas Livingston Lermonth, William Cross Yule and Henry Anderson, all three of whom later claimed land in what is now Ballarat. The Yule family Scottish settlers Archibald Buchanan Ewell and his brother William Cross Ewell arrived in 1837 and squatted a 10,000-acre sheep run. The first houses were built near Woolshed Creek by William Ewell and Anderson, while Ewell erected a hut at Black Swamp in 1838. Outsiders originally knew of the settlement as Eweley's Station and Eweley's Swamp. Archibald Ewell named the area Ballarat, which it is thought he derived from local Waithorong Aboriginal words for the area, Ballarat. The meaning of this word is not certain, however, several translations have been made and it is generally thought to mean resting place. In some dialects, balla means bent elbow, which is translated to mean reclining or resting, and arit meaning place. 1850s. Gold rush. The first publicized discovery of gold in the region was by Thomas Hiscock in the 2nd of August 1851 in the Buninyong region to the south. The find brought other prospectors to the area, and on the 19th of August 1851, John Dunlop and James Regan struck gold at Poverty Point with a few ounces. Within days of the announcement of Dunlop and Regan's find, a gold rush began, bringing thousands of prospectors to the Yarrowee Valley, which became known as the Ballarat Diggings. Yields were particularly high, with the first prospectors in the area extracting between half an ounce and up to 5 ounces of alluvial gold per day. As news of the Australian gold rushes reached the world, Ballarat gained an international reputation as a particularly rich gold field. As a result, a huge influx of immigrants occurred, including many from Ireland and China, gathering in a collection of prospecting shanty towns around the creeks and hills. The first post office opened on the 1st of November 1851. It was the first Victorian post office to open in a gold mining settlement. Parts of the district were first surveyed by William Urquhart as early as October 1851. By 1852, his grid plan and wide streets for land sales in the new township of West Ballarat, built upon a plateau of basalt, contrasted markedly with the existing narrow unplanned streets, tents and gullies of the original East Ballarat settlement. The new town's main streets of the time were named in honour of police commissioners and gold commissioners of the time, with the main street, Sturt Street, named after Evelyn Pipfield Shirley Sturt, Dana Street named after Henry Dana, and Lydiard Street after his assistant, Doveton Street after Francis Crossman Doveton, Armstrong after David Armstrong, and Mare Street after William Mare. These officials were based at the government encampment, which was strategically positioned on an escarpment with an optimal view over the district's diggings. The first newspaper, The Banner, published on the 11th of September 1853, was one of many to be distributed during the gold rush period. Print media played a large role in the early history of the settlement. Ballarat attracted a sizable number of miners from the Californian 1848 gold rush, and some were known as Balifornians. Civil disobedience in Ballarat led to Australia's only armed civil uprising, the Eureka Rebellion, which took place in Ballarat on 3 December 1854. The event, in which 22 miners were killed, is considered to be a defining moment in Australian history. The city earned the nickname, the Golden City, in the 1850s. The gold rush population peaked at almost 60,000, mostly male diggers, by 1858. However, the early population was largely itinerant. As quickly as the alluvial deposits drew prospectors to Ballarat, the rate of gold extraction fluctuated, and, as they were rapidly worked dry, many quickly moved to rush other fields as new findings were announced, particularly Mount Alexander in 1852, Fiery Creek in 1855, Ararat in 1857. By 1859, a smaller number of permanent settlers, numbering around 23,000, many of whom had built personal wealth in gold, established a prosperous economy based around a shift to deep underground gold mining. Confidence of the city's early citizens in the enduring future of their city is evident in the sheer scale of many of the early public buildings. generous public recreational spaces, and opulence of many of its commercial establishments and private housing. A local steam locomotive industry developed from 1854 with the Phoenix Foundry operating until 1906. The railway came to the town with the opening of the Geelong-Ballarat line in 1862, and Ballarat developed as a major railway town. As the city grew, the region's original indigenous inhabitants were quickly expelled to the fringe and, by 1867, few at all remained. Victorian city. From the late 1860s to the early 20th century, Ballarat made a successful transition from a gold rush town to an industrial-age city. The ramshackle tents and timber buildings gradually made way for permanent buildings. Many impressive structures of solid stone and brick, mainly built from wealth generated by early mining. Prince Alfred, Duke of Edinburgh, visited between 9 and 13 December 1867, and, as the first royal visit, the occasion was met with great fanfare. The Prince's room was prepared at Craig's Royal Hotel for his stay. The city's first civic centre, Prince Alfred Hall, erected over the Yarrowee between the two municipalities, was named in his honour during his visit. The later attempt of the prince's assassination by Ballaratian Henry James O'Farrell was met with shock and great horror from locals. Ballarat was proclaimed a city in 1871. Gong Reservoir was built in 1877 to alleviate flooding and to provide a permanent water supply. A direct railway to Melbourne was completed in December 1889. Many industries and workshops had been established as a result of manufacturing and servicing for the deep lead mining industry. Local boosterists at the start of the 20th century adopted the nickname Athens of Australia, first used to describe the city by the prestigious Irish-Australian jurist and politician of the early 20th century Sir John Madden. On 13 May 1901, the Duke of York and his wife, Mary the Duchess of York, travelled by train from Melbourne to Ballarat. The first electricity supply was completed in 1901 by the Electric Supply Company of Victoria. A bluestone power station was built at the corner of Ripon Street and Wendouree Parade in 1901 with the main aim of providing the power required for electrification of the city's tramway network. Declining fortunes following the start of the 20th century, however, mining activity slowed and Ballarat's growth all but stopped. The city went into a period of decline and saw a reversal of the fortunes acquired in the previous century. The Sunshine Rail disaster in 1908 resulted in the death of dozens of Ballarat residents. On 19 August 1909, a great storm lashed the city, resulting in the death of one person and injury of 7 others. During the storm, a tornado swept across the city's northern and eastern suburbs, destroying numerous homes in Ballarat North, Soldiers Hill, Black Hill and Ballarat East, lifting and then again touching down at Eureka, where it destroyed more homes before dissipating. One bright spot in this period was the establishment of Osprey Pottery in 1922 by the artist Gladys Raynal, one of Australia's first potters, and her husband, George Samuel Osborne. The pottery closed in 1926 when Osborne developed lead poisoning. Ballarat's significant representation during World War I resulted in heavy human loss. The city eventually lost first provincial status to Geelong. In response, local lobbyists continually pushed the Victorian government for decentralisation, the greatest success being the Victorian Railways opening the Ballarat North workshops in April 1917. The Great Depression proved a further setback for Ballarat, with the closure of many institutions and causing the worst unemployment in the city's history, with over 1,000 people in the dole queue. The city's two municipalities, Ballarat East and West Town Councils, finally amalgamated in 1921 to form the city of Ballarat. Since the 20th century, while deep, the Depression was also brief. The interwar period proved a period of recovery for Ballarat, with a number of major infrastructure projects well underway, including a new sewerage system. In 1930, Ballarat Airport was established. By 1931, Ballarat's economy and population was recovering strongly with further diversification of industry. Although in 1936 Geelong displaced it as the state's second-largest city. During World War II, an expanded Ballarat Airport was the base of the RAF Wireless Air Gunners School as well as the base for USAAF Liberator bomber squadrons. In 1942, Ballarat became connected to the state electricity grid by a 66,000 kV line. Prior to this, power supply was generated locally. In the post-war era, Ballarat's growth continued. In response to an acute housing shortage, significantly suburban expansion occurred. An extensive housing commission of Victoria Estate was built on the former Ballarat Common. The estate was originally planned to contain over 750 prefabricated houses. While planning for the estate began in 1949, main construction occurred between 1951 to 1962. The 1950s brought a new optimism to the city. On 17 April 1952 it was announced that Lake Wendouree was to be the venue for rowing events of the 1956 Summer Olympics. Work soon began on an Olympic village in Gillies Street. A new prefabricated power terminal substation at Norman Street, Ballarat North was constructed between 1951 and 1953 by the State Electricity Commission. The first Begonia Festival, a highly successful community celebration, was held in 1953. Elizabeth II visited on 8 March 1954. The Civic Centre, Prince Alfred Hall, had burned down suspiciously that year. However, a new Civic Hall was constructed and opened in March 1955. In the 23rd of November 1956, the Olympic torch was carried through the city and the following day the rowing events were held at the lake. On the 2nd of March 1958, the Queen Mother visited Ballarat. During the following decades, the city saw increased threats to its heritage. In 1964, the Ballarat City Council passed laws banning pillar-supported verandas in the CBD, which threatened the removal of historic cast-iron verandas in the city. The bylaw was met by staunch opposition from the National Trust, who had begun campaigning to protect some of the city's most historic buildings. By the 1970s, Ballarat began to officially recognise its substantial heritage, and the first heritage controls were recommended to ensure its preservation. With the opening of Sovereign Hill, the city made a rapid shift to become a major cultural tourist destination visited by thousands each year. During the 1970s, a further 300 houses were constructed at Wendouree West. Private housing in the adjacent suburb of Wendouree closely matched and eventually eclipsed this by the mid-1960s. The suburb of Greater Wendouree and Wendouree West had evolved as the suburban middle-class heart of the city. Charles, Prince of Wales, visited Ballarat on 28 October 1974, during which he toured Sovereign Hill, the Ballarat College of Advanced Education's new Mount Helen campus and the White Swan Reservoir, and spoke at Civic Hall. The city continued to grow at the national average throughout the late 20th century and early 21st century. In 2008, the City of Ballarat released a plan directing that growth of the city over the next 30 years is to be concentrated to the west of the city centre. The Ballarat West Growth Area Plan was approved by the city and state government in 2010, planning an extensive fringe development consisting of 14,000 new homes and up to 40,000 new residents, including new activity centres and employment zones.